Am I going to see me?
It'll have a delay, but we're live now.
Okay, hey guys. I think I might have to shut the bird thing. Can you hear me okay? That's the first thing to check here. Yes, no, somebody click through on the lives. Let me know if you can hear and see everything okay. Can you see me?
I can see you good.
I can't see me. There we go.
Yeah, it's a huge delay.
Okay. Yeah, there I am. All right. So, live Q&A. Any questions you guys have, pop them in through here. I'm gonna shut that thing real quick. So give me a second. That's what happens when it's live, right? Hopefully they'll see me in the background, right?
Yeah, they see you.
Okay.
And they also say they can hear you.
All right. They can hear the birds too. Another use for the tsunami bar. Wrong bar. How's that for an intro? That will keep them on the channel, right?
Probably.
All right, guys. That's one use for the tsunami bar is that those are our fans that blow the air out. Birds get up in there, and we would have been listening to birds for an hour. So any questions you guys have, I'm not seeing super chats come in. So there's either nobody here or nobody has any questions. So I got a confirmation that you can hear me. Got to scare the birds away. Did that. Okay. Any experience with someone with ligament and joint hypermobility due to overuse injuries? It's a broad question, so I don't know how to answer that one. It's kind of like a physical therapy question, I guess. What are some things you can do to help? Message retracted. Okay, I understand why, because I didn't understand what that was. Hey Dave, the background picture for the Just Dave looks great. That's Jacob, man, so it's the man behind the other side over here. Any tips on shortening workouts? Here we go. Without having to cut down on exercise and volume. Yeah, cut down the rest. So that would actually be a way to increase the volume. So watch your rest periods if you're trying to cut down on the training time. Thoughts on a forearm roller? Been using it lately because it feels like it's improving my grip. I don't personally like it because I haven't seen it do a whole lot to help people with the grip per se. And when I'm speaking about grip, I'm talking about grip on things like the deadlift and, tightness with the bench and so forth. I don't hate it. I just think that there's better things that you could do instead of that, such as hex grip or dumbbell holds with hex dumbbells, things like that. Love your and John's videos and the information on YouTube. You have a good YouTube personality for someone that's already pretty close to the genetic limit. Would you recommend the Unity program? Yeah, it sounds like you have a little bit larger training age. So a couple things to keep in mind with the Unity program is the first 3 weeks of that is a conditioning phase. So what I'm saying is you may or may not have to do it. I still think everybody should do that because I don't know if the conditioning is really, if most people's conditioning is really what they think it is. The other thing is towards the very end on the peak strength thing, that can be a little weird with somebody that's got a lot of experience as well. But outside of those two things, I think it'd be a great program for you for the reason of how I use the word accessories and supplemental exercises a little bit loosely. when it's a bodybuilding program, because I kind of define them a little bit differently, because I don't know if those are really the right words for that. Those exercises after, see, I'm trying to say, those exercises are going to be trained harder than what you would typically find in a pure strength program. I can go a little bit more into the difference between the supplemental and accessory exercises if people want, and just throw a question in for that. And Jack, thank you for the super chat. Those help us tremendously. That's why I'm doing these open Q&As like this. They actually end up being the highest return content that we have on YouTube, and it's 100% because of these super chats. So thank you. I had to take a while off powerlifting training for travel, and I'm struggling to get back to it. Any tips on getting retrained? I'm assuming when you say take a time off, I don't know how long off. So my suggestion would be, you know, it's pretty basic. Ease back into it and ease back into it. How I would do it is I wouldn't ease back into it every other day or 3 or 4 days a week. I'd ease back into it with a couple training sessions per week that will allow you to be able to train a little bit more like how you would want to. If you were going to ease back into it on a 4 or 5 day a week training plan, you're going to have to keep the volume and the effort really, really low to be able to do that and still recover and to build the GPP or the conditioning back. When you're just going 2 days per week, like a Tuesday, a Saturday, something that's spread out quite a bit, then you can train a little bit harder, like how you would want to. Then you're going to have enough complete recovery days to be able to recover. That's how I do it, is I'll start with a couple days, and I can kind of push it a little heavier, push it a little bit harder than I would be able to if it was 5 days. Then over a period of time, I'll be able to add in those other days as the conditioning starts to come back in. And you'll know that based upon how your recovery is from those 2 training days that you're doing and how your recovery is between exercises that you're doing. I mentioned DC training once. Yes, I mentioned it many times. What's your opinion on it, and do you like it? Yeah, I like it. The thing is, it's a little weird though, because you know, Dante will say that it's not HIIT training, and I don't disagree with that. But I kind of look at DC training, HIIT training, you know, all those modalities, I guess is what you would call them, or philosophies is probably better, in the same sphere or the same field. While they're all different, you know, I probably like, you know, the dog crap philosophy a little bit better than some of the other ones. But I do like them. I like them as part of an overall annual plan or an overall structured training program in its own phases. So I'll just leave it with that. I can go on forever about that, but want to get to some of these other questions and some of the other super chats. I got one from Dilly4. I started taking my training seriously in January. I weighed 240 and now I'm nearly 270. When should I stop gaining weight? You're on a roll, man. My question would be, from the 240 to the 270, how much of that is fat? How much of it is muscle? There's obviously a lot of ways to go about that. I'm still kind of old school, and we'll use, you know, body fat calipers on a 7, or I like the Perillo better because I think that's 12 sites. And I don't look at it for a total number. I just look at it for the different caliper position. Basically what I'm saying is, if all of that is fat, then you probably want to dial it back. If it's a 50-50 ratio or something like that, just keep going at it. Just with this big of an increase at this point, I would start to add in some mild conditioning if you're not so already, just to help with the recovery, because you're walking around with extra weight. You know, every step that you take is extra weight. So it's going to be, your recovery demands are going to increase a little bit, which is in time, if not already, it's going to make it harder for you to recover from your main training sessions, because your circulatory system can be inhibited slightly. So, you know, the Vogue thing used to be 10-minute walks. I just put some type of light conditioning in every day, every other day, just move a little bit more, but do so you don't want to risk the weight that you've put on. So if you start adding in walks or bikes or however you want to do it, and the 270 drops down to 262, take it back out because you added in too much. So add in a little bit to be able to keep the weight where it's supposed to be. And you do want to be able to get it to, I personally would like to see it, if you're trying to gain weight, at least 20, 30 minutes a few times a week, or 10 minutes a couple times a day. If you do start to lose weight because of this added activity that you're putting in, then you need to eat more, obviously. So that's the balance. If it drops fast, pull it and then add it back in, but eat more as you're adding it back in. And if you get this balance right, then you're going to be able to keep increasing weight, and you'll be able to keep much of the fat at bay. All right, saw more super chats come in. Best resources for learning anatomy and physiology. Depends how you learn. I personally like books, but there's a lot of apps now. I'm kind of looking at my iPad now. I'm afraid to close anything when it's running, but there's some really good apps, and if those would be probably the better way to do it, because you can zoom in, you can be able to see things a little bit better. So books, apps would be what I would say is the best way to do that. Is that helmet? Which box squat pad or box squat box should I buy to start box squats from scratch? That first thing is, you don't need to buy a pad or a box to be able to start box squats. You can just get a box. So the different pads that we have are for different reasons. Some of them are going to compress more than others. So if I was to recommend one, I would go with our all foam box squat box, which I believe is 17, 14, and 12 inches on all three sides. Because it's light, it's easy to flip around, kind of easy to adjust there. But by no means is something like that necessary to be able to do box squats. I used to do box squats on milk crates with pieces of plywood stacked on top, or cut pieces of rubber mat. So you don't need to have a special item for the box squats. Difference between box used with Jujimufu and a smaller black one. The adjustable black, the smaller black one's what I usually recommend for everybody, because it's easier to implement into the training for most. It's smaller, it's more portable, it's easier to move around. What he was using and what I use a lot in here are plyo boxes that we sell with a little bit harder top. The reason why I like the bigger box like that is, depending upon the person, if I'm trying to get them to sit back more, or if I'm trying to get them to sit down, whatever I'm trying to do, when the box is bigger, like what we have, I can push it forward on them in different positions to where they can feel the box either against their calves, is what I'm looking for, or they're going to feel it against their hamstrings on the way that they're sitting down. So it just becomes a different feedback for me to be able to help teach them where their body position should be on the eccentric. Over a period of time, then I just slide the box back a little bit more, so that's not there, but I'm going to use whatever I can use while teaching somebody. I can't do that when the box is smaller unless they're always using a close stance. That's the reason why I use those bigger ones. They are kind of a pain in the ass though, because it's extremely hard to spot somebody from behind with the bigger ones because the box is kind of in the way. Will training in single ply suit straps down impact my technique much as a raw lifter? My squat technique is bent over and pretty wide. I don't think so. Not with a single ply and the straps down, because there's not going to be a whole lot there that's going to try to dictate your movement. So, and there's not so much material that I don't imagine that your carryover is going to be super big. So in a way, it kind of is like a reverse band method or a future method or whatever people are calling those things today. So it can help with overloading. It can also help a lot because you'll be able to use a little bit more weight. I'm sure you've already figured that out. So it will help a lot with your setup, with your start, with your eccentric control, because you're going to be training with a little bit bigger weights. So it's going to help with that. I wouldn't exclusively do that and then go into the meat, because you need to have some specificity and you need to have some work without that. But I'm a big advocate in using some type of brief or a light single ply suit if you're a wider stance squatter, even if it's raw, for periods of the training. So not the training all the time. How would you practice the void part of big lifts? I still have a hard time knowing I can do a heavy set even when the logbook says so. Is it teachable? Of course it's teachable. How do you practice that? I don't really know. You know, it depends upon how the person's focus is, how they don't. You just got to find a way to will yourself to do more than they think you can do, and use the challenge to drive you. So if you have a set that you're going to kind of go after, like what you're talking about, it doesn't need to be done on every set. But if you have a set that you want to go after, and before that set, even for a second, you think, man, I don't know if I can do this. And by that, I mean, let's say it's going to be a set of 8. So before the set, you ask yourself, and keep in mind, it's got to be an exercise that you're not going to absolutely destroy yourself by falling out of the groove. Say it's a leg press or something that's somewhat stable. And your last set is going to be a set of 8. And you ask yourself, I wonder if I can do 15. You got to be able to sit there and think, I don't know, I do know. And that battle that goes back and forth between you don't know, you do know, you have to find a way to have that piss you off or to drive you, just to be able to find out and then to push and see. And maybe you don't get the 15. Maybe you get the 10. Maybe you get the 11. But you know what? That was 3 more than you thought you could do before you started it. And that's the difference between, you know, getting the most out of a set and getting just what's kind of necessary out of a set. The bigger question with that becomes, when is it necessary to do one versus the other? And that's a whole different discussion in regards to like accessory type work or supplemental type work, that there are times and there are reasons to be able to just fluff through them and just do the volume, do the sets and the reps, especially if the front part of the training day is hard and being pushed. If the front part of the training day isn't hard, or it isn't being pushed for whatever reason, or that doesn't exist because it's more of a hypertrophy thing, then how you train the supplements and the supplemental and the accessories completely changes. And it can't just be fluffing through the stuff. It has to be actually working hard, pushing those things hard. Otherwise, it's not going to do shit for you. And it will just be a complete, I don't want to say it's a complete waste of time, but you're leaving a lot on the table because you're not putting enough effort into those things. So again, it depends upon the training day, how the training day is laid out, how the program's laid out. But for most that may be watching this, if you don't have a main focus on 1 to 2 exercises in the front end of the program, and it's just chest, shoulders, and triceps, or some split like that, then your shit needs to be trained hard. It has to be, you know. And it, most of the time, that's part of the reason why I do some of these train your ass off things. Most of the time when the training is structured that way, people don't train anywhere near as hard as they should. So if that's being the case, they should probably train for 2 hours and do 40 sets, because they're not training as much as, or as hard as they could if they just did 7 to 8 exercises and actually busted their ass on the things that they were doing. So things like accessories and supplemental or accessories matter a hell of a lot if it's hypertrophy stuff. If it's just strength training and it's working in that direction, then it doesn't matter as much. But there's a big difference between the two. Okay, that was a little bit of a long one. I can go into that more. Thanks for the old meathead tips anymore. I have meathead tips every single time I come to the gym. The issue is just filming them. I don't like walking around with a tripod and a phone and filming all my sets. So that's kind of part of it too. Looking through the super chats again, that's why I'm scrolling through here. Again, the super chats help us tremendously. That's actually, if you want to be completely upfront about it, that's how we end up being able to do all the content that you're seeing on our YouTube, is through these things in the super chats. So it's, in a way, these super chats and our product sales are what fund the content that we put out. So as long as it does that, I will sit here and answer all you guys' questions. Is training more explosive reps better than training with more time under tension for strength? It depends upon the training. So it depends upon the training purpose. I can say yes and no to that. So let's say it's just a hypertrophy day for whatever reason, and you don't have hypertrophy phases, and it's a muscle building day. Then the time under tension is probably going to matter more. Actually, I'm seeing that you're talking about strength. I'm sorry, I did not read that correctly. The explosive reps are going to have a far greater impact on strength, in my opinion, than the time under tension. If you're speaking time under tension from a hypertrophy standpoint, if you're speaking about time under tension in regards to a maximal squat in a competition, may take 5, 6, 7 total seconds, from maybe even longer than that. It could be 10 total seconds from the time the lifter gets to the bar to the time the lift is finished. When people are looking at time under tension in competitive or max type of standards, what they fail to recognize is the lift actually starts and the tension actually starts when the tension is on the body. So when the lifter grabs the bar and is squeezing the shit out of the bar and begins to brace under the bar, that's when I start counting the time under tension, because that tension is going to be very, very tight and very, very strong in an isometric type of contraction for several seconds before the walkout or before the start of the squat even begins. So if you're trying to have specificity in regards to the time under tension, but you're not counting the time it takes to get set up and the time it takes to rack the bar, then you're missing a lot of the specificity in the time under tension that we're talking about. On barbell squats off of 14-inch, about 20% of my football players have their butts coming off the pad and back 2 inches before driving the bar up. Any weaknesses? And what I would do to fix that immediately is I would just take the box up 2 inches so we can stop that bad habit from happening. Obviously, people are going to disagree with me on this. Yes, there's a weakness. Yes, there's problems. So what's the fastest, quickest way to solve the problem is to eliminate it. So then you eliminate it. And then you make that groove, you make that position stronger right before they're starting to have the issues, right? So if they're starting to have an issue 2 inches off of the box, get rid of the 2 inches, make them super strong, 2 inches higher. Then if you reduce an inch, that problem is not going to be there anymore. And then you start working from that position. Let me explain this in a little bit different way. Go back to the video where I was helping Juji with the deadlift, and the choice to be able to build his deadlift for him, you know, for the way that he trains and the objectives that he has for his training was deficit deadlifts. Do deficit deadlifts help people that are weak off the floor? Yes, they can, depending upon the person. I could have also had him do static pulls, or had him do isometric pulls from a power rack with a bar 1 to 3 inches off of the floor in a quasi-isometric fashion or just a pure isometric fashion, to where he pulls into that for a 3 to 5 second count for, say, 15 or 20 total seconds for that training exercise every time that he deadlifts, and have him use that to build the strength off of the floor. How will that build the strength off of the floor? If it's 1, 2, possibly 3 inches away from where the floor is. If you look at how isometric contractions work, you can strengthen that range of motion within, I think it's 10, 15, 20 degrees, plus or minus wherever you're strengthening. So if I strengthen the degree or the phase just above where the problem is, pulling the bar off of the floor, then he's going to be stronger pulling the bar off the floor. I did not go with that because his body structure and his movement when he was deadlifting was dictating that this is more because of the muscle structure in his legs than it was the actual starting strength of the lift. Had it not been the muscle structure in the legs, that entire video could have been working on how to do those isometric deadlifts instead of the deficit pulls. So the point that I'm trying to make here is if I had him do the isometric pulls, I don't believe that would help him as the deficits would. Where other people who are going to do the same thing because of what they saw with Juji will do that, and then they won't get the benefit out of that because they should probably otherwise be doing the isometric pulls. So the reason I'm expanding on this is it's going back to what you're saying with the football players and the box squats and the situation that you're talking about. I know the population, I know the demographic that you're talking about from the average standpoint. So I'm pretty sure I know the athlete type that you're talking about. That's why I'm going with this compared to a lot of the other things that you could do, because a lot of the other things that you could do are going to require a lot more focus and a lot more patience. And when you're dealing with young athletes, football players, they may be very coachable on the field, but they are a pain in the ass to coach in the weight room. So I went with the easiest solution to be able to fit the demographic that you're asking about. I hope that helped. Okay, only deadlift, super chat. If I don't compete, should I even think about, I didn't even think that, I didn't even read this one first. Should I even think about steroids? I'm pretty confident I can reach a 5. I avoid this question because of several reasons, but the biggest reason is for me to sit here and think that I don't have any influence would be very naive. It's not for me to help somebody to decide if they should use any performance-enhancing drugs at all. That's between that person and the doctor. That's a decision that they have to make on their own, and I don't think they should make that decision hastily, and I don't think they should make the decision with influence from some fathead on YouTube. So I avoid questions like that because I'm not going to be the person that's going to steer somebody to not do something or steer somebody to do something. Personally, I'm indifferent to what you decide to do as long as it's your decision and it's what you decided and it's because of what you think you need to be able to do. So that's how I approach that, especially on an online type of platform where I don't know a whole lot about what's going on. So okay, scrolling through. I got a mouse. I forgot this last time too. Okay, YouTuber question. Why is there no max effort deadlift day in the Unity program? The work. You know, the Unity program, there's a bunch of reasons. Let me give you a few. If you're doing all the other stuff, your deadlift should go up, especially for the demographic that we know, is going to be doing that program. The other thing is for the people doing John's stuff, they're probably going to be more inclined to want to squat than they're going to want to deadlift. So for me to put that in there would have been to take the squat type stuff out. So I didn't want to do that. So there's speed deadlift days in there. That's really it. You know, it's to throw it in there with the amount of volume and the effort that's being put into the other exercises in the training day, for me, was a little bit over the top as far as recovery demands of the program. If John and I do another block, or actually another 3 blocks to complement this one, your deadlifts are going to be in there, because it shouldn't be, I don't want people to be away from the deadlifts for that long a period of time. But for this one, it was de-emphasized and kind of being maintained with yoke bar squats, some of the back work that's in there, and the speed pulls. But it's not going to be able to stay maintained for long term. So that's the reason why for that. Go to my mouse here. Samson Burdock, what are your thoughts on weighted calisthenics, push-ups, dips, etc. for powerlifting strength? I don't really, I'm indifferent to that. I don't really have any thoughts. I guess if you like them, do them. If you think they work, do them. I'm a little biased though on some of those movements, and I'll tell you why. The pull-ups and the dips, I'm biased negatively towards those, and not for a really solid reason. The reason I'm biased on that is I've been doing this for a long time, and so 4 decades. The people that I know that have also been doing this for a long time, 3-4 decades. When I speak to them, there's conversations about what can you do, which is what I try to steer everything towards, instead of talking about what you can't do all the time, more of what you can do. When we start talking about things that we can no longer do, exercises that always come up, and when I say that, I'm talking over 90% of the time: pull-ups, dips, overhead press, tricep extensions, almost all the time. So when I got 20 years of seeing that and 20 years of hearing that, and then all the people that came before me, when I was asking them what exercises can you no longer do, those also were on their list of exercises they could no longer do. I started thinking about it a little bit and thought, well, maybe I shouldn't do those exercises. So that's where my bias comes on those. I don't think they're bad exercises by any nature. They're great exercises. I think they're great exercises for beginners. So by no means am I against those, but that's why you won't see them in a lot of the programs that I'm going to consult with, unless it's young athletes and they just need better body awareness. What would you, this is from David, it's a super chat. Again, thank you guys for the super chats. They help us way more than you guys know, and they also are one of the biggest analytic metrics that we look at with the content that we put out. What would you like for powerlifting to look in the future? More equipped, more or less federations when it comes to mine? I don't care. You know, it's actually, I don't want to say that because that kind of implies that I do. Yeah, I do. What I would like to see is, I'm indifferent to the styles of the lifting. If it's multi-ply, single-ply, raw, sleeves, wraps, band shirts, not band shirts, to me, that it makes no difference one way or another, as long as the people who are doing it really, really like what they're doing. What I would like to see more of is the camaraderie that I grew up with the powerlifting. And I don't know if that ever comes back, because there's more options. You know, people can now train for meets in their home, you know, with all the home gyms that are there, small groups in the home. You know, there's a lot more gyms that cater to powerlifting than before. You know, when I was coming up, you're lucky to find a couple gyms, maybe 3 gyms in a whole state. You know, so you would travel to those gyms to be able to learn from those people. And that doesn't seem to be, you know, the case anymore. and that's okay. But I think that, there's give and take with all that. So as long as the lifters like what they're doing, I'm all for that. There's always going to be drama, debates, criticism. I mean, it's been there since the 80s when I was in the thing, and there wasn't the internet. The debates were going on telephones, and they're going in, a magazine article that somebody would say something about somebody else in, and that's never going to go away. That's just kind of part of the sport. So you just take that for what it is. Any advice on starting back after a 5-year break? Feels like strength is coming back faster than my body can handle it. Yes, that's probably true. Started with low weight, worked slowly up over months. You're kind of doing the right thing. Don't be too eager to push when it doesn't feel like you can push, which is kind of a stupid thing to say. There's going to be times as you're going through your training, assuming that you're structuring your training halfway decent, to where things feel like they're on point. Especially now, when they're on point, go ahead and ride that wave for 2 to 3 weeks and then back it down. Now, you might have to back it down for a week. You might have to back it down for 6. But the next time that wave comes, ride it again. And maybe the next time you're going to be able to get it for 4, 6 weeks and then back it back down again. What I'm trying to say is don't force it when it's not there, and then don't try to extend that wave further than what you really know it is. And the people who, this is a weird thing to talk about, because the people who are going to get what I'm talking about totally get what I'm talking about. The other ones are not going to have a clue what I'm talking about. But I think you kind of get what I'm talking about. So just use your internal regulation and listen to it. But by that doesn't just mean keeping it pulled back and going super slow. That also means, putting the gas down a little more when you can put the gas down a little more. Because if you don't, then it's going to take way, way, way too long to come back. I'm not telling you to push into those injuries that you're talking about. You know what I'm talking about, I assume, but I'm pretty sure you do. Jeffrey, I'm better than Netflix, man. I don't know about that, but I'll take the compliment. Do you think schools, high schools and private colleges will offer scholarships for powerlifting and Olympic lifting? I'm not 100% sure on this, but I do think some colleges have. I've heard of a couple people getting scholarships for the powerlifting. I don't know about the Olympic weightlifting. I don't follow that close enough to really know. In the future, will they? I don't know. I mean, our future just kind of all got disrupted pretty bad here in the past year. So let's just hope things kind of get back to where they were, before things got all screwed up, and kind of go from there. I certainly would not count on it. If you're a lifter coming up, thinking that you're going to get, a scholarship for it. At the same time, I wouldn't, if you think you can try to be able to get it, I would go 100% to be able to try to go to get it. But I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into being able to get that. Tight quads are giving me pain, especially when I cheat row or sumo deadlift. Any advice? Don't understand what you're asking, so can't help you much there. Okay, go back through. Do you see any of the super chats that I missed?
No, we haven't missed any.
I think we've been hitting all the super chats. The questions go by pretty quick, so it's kind of hard to pull on some of these. I have an answer for this question. Oh, cool. McKendree, I think that's it. The university has the first college powerlifting club, and I believe they offer small scholarships. So there you go. Hey, Dave, do you know that Tom Stolman, the world's strongest man, has autism? No, I did not know that. You know, it's, to be completely transparent, I don't even know who he is. So don't take that bad. I mean, if it's Tom, don't take that bad. I just don't follow the whole social thing like I used to. I assume he won the world's strongest man. I look like an idiot right now. But congratulations to him. I really don't care if he has autism or if he doesn't have autism, if he's on the spectrum or not on the spectrum. If he won the world's strongest man, fucking props to him, man. I don't, that's all that really matters to me. Do you still believe in speed work for raw lifters? Alex Bromley and others have said that it's better to practice slow. And I really don't care what other people say. I go by what I've seen work for me. So, you know, obviously he's entitled to his opinion, and he's entitled to his opinion based on what he's seen work for others. So that's great. You know, keep building on that. I have nothing against that. You know, I don't necessarily disagree either, because training technique and a slower controlled pattern for a lot of people is the way to be able to do that. So do I believe in speed work? Yes, I do. For raw lifters, yes, I do. You know, it's compensatory acceleration. So there's obviously going to be different thoughts on that, just going off, you know, what I've seen work. Now, the bigger issue with this isn't, do you think that you should move a barbell with maximum force, or do you think you should move a barbell as slow as you possibly can? I don't think that is what people are saying when they're putting educational content out there. I'm pretty sure that there's probably nobody out there trying to develop strength that's telling their strength athletes to move the barbell as slowly as they possibly can. At the same time, I don't think that there's anybody out there that are telling their athletes to use such a low bar weight, like just a barbell, and squat up as fast as you can so you jump 3 foot in the air. You know, so usually if I speak to somebody and there is some kind of issue like you're trying to bring up here, we're on the same page. It's just the internet likes to take things and twist them in all kinds of fucked up weird ways, or, you know, different people like to twist things in all kinds of fucked up weird ways. Are they necessary? You know, there's a lot of ways to go about technique. I did a podcast specifically on that, if you want to check that out, on the learning process and how movement is taught and ingrained. And in a certain period of time, that movement has to be ingrained with speed. It also has to be ingrained with fatigue. And it also has to be ingrained with speed, fatigue, and stress for it to optimally be learned in such a way that it can be performed in the highest competitive standards. Any tips for a lifter with shorter arms? Deadlifting has always been difficult right off the floor because of my back angle. Hard to say without seeing you pull, you know, because this can mean a whole lot of different things. So I don't know if you're weak off the floor because of that, or if you're weak off the floor because of body position, or if you're weak off the floor just because you're weak off the floor. So there's a lot of factors that can play into that. I'm not too sure that the arms are always that. They definitely play into it. Not saying they don't, but I would have to be able to see the lift to be able to advise a little bit more on that. Have you made any decisions on who you're inviting to the August 7th bench day? To the best of my knowledge, all the train your ass off sessions have been filled. If there's going to be future sessions is to be determined. Right now I am unsure, you know, how that's going to kind of play out, but I do know that all the sessions there's 1, 2, 3 dates that we put out there. They were all filled, and not only were they filled, I think there were 8, like 18 or 24 total slots. I forget what it totally was. And there are 130 people bidding for those slots. So the issue so much now is me being able to find other dates to be able to do without it becoming every weekend of my entire life, because I do have other things to be able to do. And these things are on the weekends, so it becomes an issue. It's the other takeaway from it is obviously we didn't charge enough, so there's that as well. So yeah, it's been filled. If there's going to be other ones, it's to be determined. I don't know. Just go from there. What is your view on failure training? I'm curious to hear. What do you mean? I mean, if failure training means you're missing rep 1 or 2, then you're a fucking idiot. So then you don't know how to pick weights and you just suck as a coach, because nobody should ever miss rep 1 or 2 unless it's just a complete disaster. Technically something happened. So that's that. Now, if you're talking about failure from the bodybuilding spectrum for like accessories and things like that, I'm a big advocate of training to failure, but I need to have a conversation with the person individually to know how they define that, because how they define that may be different than how somebody else defines that. So let's just say I'm in favor of training to non-aggressive, non-emotional, tempo-controlled failure for pretty much everything. So how that dictates per individual is going to depend upon the individual. I'm not a huge favor of just doing sets and reps unless it's on the back end of a heavy strength training session where you worked extremely hard on 1 or 2 exercises beforehand and you're just going through the sets and the reps for more activation, blood flow, and that kind of stuff. Some of these questions get a little weird to answer in this format. But I'll circle back to something I said earlier. I do still think most people suck at training their accessories. And they don't train them hard enough. Nah, I got a note here. If any of you guys want to save on bands, we got 20% running on bands. We got a free t-shirt sale going on right now for, what the hell shirt is it?
It's the Liberty.
The Liberty t-shirt. So a free t-shirt sale, apparel sale, band sale. It's the 4th of July sale, I believe. It'll be going for the next few days, I'm sure. I do believe Thursday, our cambered, angled bench bars will be back in stock. We've been out there. We've been out without them for about 4 weeks now. So we're looking forward to getting those back in because, again, the sales are what help us pay for the content. Looking through super chats again. Super chats have not been that good this time. Might be the wrong time of day to be doing these. So that's another thing too with you guys. You know, after this is closed, after we close this down, if you watch this later and this would work at a better time for you, please put that in the comment section. The comments do help the algorithm a lot. So please comment if you like this or if there's follow-ups that you would like to any of these questions. Please put that in the comments after this is done as well. You know, anything that you guys can do to help us with this channel helps significantly. Let's put it this way, it helps more than what you guys actually think it does. Super chats are pull from another question. Will you have us sit down with Mark Ripito and drink milk? Can you do that? Probably not, because I don't, it's kind of stupid, but not, I respect Mark, but I don't see the point of that. in context of fatigue management, would you rather train 8 RPE or keep fatigue low, or go RPE 10 and accept a higher degree of failure? It depends on how the person defines RPE. You know, how I'm going to define that and how the person is going to define that is going to be completely different. So your 8 could be a 4 to me, you know, if I'm working with somebody. So I get what you're saying. So what I'm saying here, I suppose, is to go 100% at 10 and accept a high degree of fatigue. What do you mean by that? Because is that with, you know, strip sets? Is that with force reps? Is that with rest pause reps? Is that with starting with a slow tempo and then halfway through the set picking the tempo up to be able to get more reps? Is that with cheat reps? There's so many factors that can play into this that, you know, I get what you're saying. So the way that I'm seeing this, if you're talking an RPE of 10, then no, I don't think people should do that. I think they should rarely do that in training. But most people are not going to think a 10 is the same thing that I think the 10 is. So if I take them through a set and show them what I think a 10 is, it might be a 5 for them. So all I'm saying is, for most people, before they have to do cheat reps and before they have to do momentum and all the other kind of stuff, if they can run that set to failure, or to a point to where, let's not say failure, to a point to where the rep speed begins to significantly decrease, to where they don't think they can get another rep, then that's probably where they need to be for most of the accessory training. Now, for some of the other accessory training, if you don't have all that front-loaded stuff that I'm talking about, then we can talk about a little body English to be able to get another rep in there, or, you know, some other intensification factors to be able to get a little bit more work in there without mentally having to go absolutely berserk to get more work in. The reason why I like things like that is, from the strength side, it's less work sets. So if somebody can get the work done in 1 to 2 work sets instead of 4 to 6, from the strength side, I want the 1 to 2. Now, if it's more in a hypertrophy phase or hypertrophy blocks, then I don't want those 1 to 2. Then I want the volume. So it depends how it's played in there. But the issue is, if it goes down to that 1 to 2, and those 1 to 2 sets are being done the same way those 4 to 6 sets are going to be done, then I don't like that either. So I think if you look through some of the past Train Your Ass Off videos, you'll get a little bit better idea watching some of the people go through sets of what I'm talking about. And I think I explained it a little bit more in some of those. What's your take on switching stance width on a box squat with the same height as from a depth progression? For what? You know, I like it for a lot of reasons outside of specificity. You know, if it's specificity, then I'm not going to like it so much, but there's reasons, I believe, to switch the squat stance the same way the reasons would be to switch bench grips and other grips, just from, you know, an overreaching, overuse type of standpoint. So as far as being integrated in during, you know, a full strength block being mixed with other work sets, say you're doing 6 work sets and 2 are going to be done with each stance, I don't like that. Now, if it's in a conditioning type block, or if it's a different block, then I would definitely think that. So I guess that would be based upon load as well. I don't like switching the stances around. If the bar weight, the bar load is going to start to exceed 60 or 70%, then I think at that point you should stay with the stance that kind of brought you there, and then mix it up on the other things. Any advice on how long to get back to heavy benching after a shoulder impingement? Also does overhead when to get back to heavy benching after a shoulder impingement. Speak to your doctor, physical therapist. I don't know what your shoulder impingement actually means. That's not my expertise there. I wouldn't do anything that hurts. I wouldn't do anything that's going to create a higher degree of wear and tear. So take that for what it is. Does the overhead have a place in shoulder rehab? Depending upon your shoulder structure, maybe. You know, my personal opinion, I think there's a whole lot of other things that you need to do before that need to be done, as far as the stabilizers, the strength, the technical aspects of the lifts that you were doing. Why did the impingement happen in the first place? Going back to examine what that was, and then how you can avoid having that happen to the other shoulder. You know, because if it was one, odds are it's probably getting pretty close in the other one as well. Answering those questions first. What's your core belief on where the strength industry is heading? Is it predominantly coaching and equipment based, or is there a different model? I don't know. I honestly don't follow that enough to even care. So, or to have an opinion. I don't know. I would assume, like everything else, it's kind of heading online, but there's it depends what you're saying by coaching and equipment as well. I don't know. Too focused on doing what we're doing here. I do keep a somewhat of an eye on what's going on in the rest of the industry, but last few years had to keep complete total focus on just what we're doing and just focusing there instead of, you know, looking out there. Because if it is all technical or all technology based and going all in that direction, I don't have the financial resources to go in that direction. So all I would be doing is looking at something that I can't do, where I'd rather focus on the things that I can do. What's a good sled workout for a newbie? I am currently doing a West Side program on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Why is the sled being put in there? It's the first thing. So if you're a newbie, you just want to put sled work in there. Use it on your lower body days. Couple trips of forward dragging. Say, I'm just throwing shit out there, right? Say 20 or 30 steps. Forward, 20 steps down, 20 steps back. Do 2 trips of forward dragging, turn around, do 2 trips of backward dragging, shut it down for right then. If that helps your recovery, doesn't hurt your recovery, then just hold it for a little while. If it seems to be helping the training, then you can throw in things like upper body shoulder raises or upper body presses and other movements like that, and see how that goes from there. And push the weight up a little bit. So keep it light to begin with, 45, maybe 90 pounds, and then jump it up after that. But for now, just keep it light. See how it folds into the mix. Which one of your barbells would you recommend for a home gym? Either the Elite FTS Power Bar, or if you want to do Olympic lifts, cleans, and stuff like that, to where you don't want the center knurling in there, the multi-purpose bar. Hey Dave, not to be a jerk, but it seems you missed my second super chat above. So only deadlift?
Yeah, only deadlift. It is. Get Chris Duffin on Table Talk, make it 3 hours.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed that. I mean, I just kind of saw that as a suggestion. I didn't know that was really a question, but I definitely saw that. So, thank you for that. Okay. You see anything in here that I missed?
Nope.
All right, well, we're going to start to wrap this up. So if anybody's got any other questions, pop them through. Can I grow a 225 bench on a slight cut using conjugate? Must respect. Sure. You know, I don't know. When I see questions like this, I don't know exactly what you're asking for here. You know, so if it's a slight cut, you know, I don't even know what your bench is. So I assume a lot of questions like this are just asking for validation. So yeah, if you can do it, you know. Best way to prevent hip impingement when squatting. Depends upon your hips, how your hips are structured. You know, so if you have hip impingement while squatting, then change the way that you're squatting and see and look into why that's actually happening. So I don't know, that's assuming that you have it to begin with, and I don't know that you do, and I don't know how you're squatting. So that's a tough one there. Everybody's hips are structured a little bit different. So that's why I'm hesitant on this, because having both hips replaced, I kind of know what happens with that. So I do know how my hips were moving in different positions in my stance, and it was more fluid, actually wider than it was medium. So everybody's a little bit different without knowing the actual structure and what's going on in there. Would you guys be able to give more of a heads up on table talks? I find that I stumble upon these randomly and check YouTube. It'd be nice if it's coming. The problem with scheduling those is if it's a guest, sometimes we don't know when the guest is going to be here. We have guests that cancel. We have guests that reschedule. When it comes to the table talks itself, the pulling together the time to be able to do those is also a rough thing. You know, there's a lot of things that go into these. You know, for instance, one of the things that we're dealing with now is when we do these things, even like this live, people want to have the timestamps. So if we do this later, then the timestamps don't get done. And to be completely honest, I'm the one that ends up doing them at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday or a Saturday. So now I don't want to do anything live unless it's done earlier in the day, to where I know I can have somebody do the timestamps so I don't end up spending all night doing them. And it's something that you guys want. So I don't want to put the time into doing something and then not give you exactly what you guys are kind of looking for. So I would love to be able to say, look, we're going to have a table talk every Thursday at X time, but you guys got to understand too, they cost way more to do still than we get back out of it. So the average cost to do a table talk, just to throw this out to you guys, it's about $500. When we look at the staff hours, the labor and all the work that goes into that, our return on that, just granted, there's going to be sales that return on that, which we track that as well. But the return on that, just from the super chats, for example, I think the last one with JM was like $47. You know, compared to doing this, you know, these super chats far pay for, you know, the time that I'm sitting here, because it's just me and Jacob. So there's not a whole lot that goes into this. There's not a whole lot of planning that goes into this. There's not a guest that goes into this. There's not all the other things. So me personally, I'm not real hip on scheduling something that I know is going to be a deficit in revenue when we do that. So we are looking for ad revenue for things like that. And granted, you know, the product sales do support the content that we do. And I say that every time I get on this thing. And we do track that. So, you know, I'm not oblivious to the whole fact. You know, a lot of you guys do support the company, but you got to remember the vast majority don't. So it's just the content that's going out there. So as a business owner, I have to look at, you know, the time that we're putting into, say, the table talk, which is a big expense, compared to putting that same number of hours into more articles that we're going to put on the website, or more engagement on Instagram, or me just doing more of this. You know, I could do 3 of these compared to 1 of the table talks. So that's why it's not scheduled. If we can get this to a point to where it has some type of positive break-even point, then I'll be more than happy to schedule. I'll be more than happy to bring more guests in and all the other things. But where we ran into problems in years past is content stacks on content, stacks on content, stacks on content. And then the sales don't justify the content that we're putting out from just the labor costs that are going into that. So a long answer, for this, but I want to be transparent with you guys because a lot of people really don't get this. They just think like the YouTube things just pop up on their own, and they don't understand that, when you're a company, you got labor costs that go into these things. I'm not just a YouTuber, doing this in my spare time, doing it all by myself, throwing it up on YouTube. I don't have the time, to be able to do that. So I'll just shut up. That's a long answer on that one. And get back to a super chat with people care about. You and your team's content is always on point. Thank you very much for your time and effort. I appreciate that. I appreciate all the thank yous that we get through the comments as well. Keep in mind, my staff is very, they work very hard on all this. They don't see the appreciation that I see through these comments. So anytime you can let them know that they're doing a good job, it's greatly appreciated, far more so than anybody that lets me know. Pause low box squats are 50% stronger than free squats on the same depth, same pounds. Okay, without seeing this, you're heaving off of the box. So essentially you're using the box as a crutch. So the way that you're doing your box squat, I would change a little bit. I would have you not sit as much on the box as you currently are. So I'm just going to throw this out here. Let's say that you're putting 100% of your weight on the box at the bottom, and then you're relaxing and flexing up. That's great. That's what I try to get a lot of people to do. I would change it to where you're only putting about 50%. So you're staying a little more statically tight and then flexing up from that position. You have to find a way to fix this, because if you don't, and then when you go to free squat, you're going to have a problem, because you're going to sit down, you're going to try to relax and flex out, and that's not going to work. So think a little bit more about that. If need be, the easiest answer here, two other suggestions. Get rid of the box for a while would be one. The other one is lower the box and replace half of the box, or at least 4 to 6 inches, with a piece of foam, compressible foam. We sell a blue foam pad, which is a compressible pad. It can just be a foam pad that compresses. Something that when you sit in, it will compress, and then you're going to come back up before you bottom out in the foam. So that's a couple suggestions for that as well. Need to gain weight from 275 to 308. At 5'4", you're 5'4", 308. That's fucking awesome. You know the answer to this. Just eat more. That's a big fucking dude. That has to be like a joke, man. Maybe you don't need to gain weight. I don't know. I gotta look this dude up. All right, what do we got here? How to program conjugate with intensity day, max hover, and volume day instead of speed work most of the time. Just replace the speed work with the repetition method, with volume work. Pretty simple. So if you don't want to do speed work, the speed work is what, I see speed work as kind of technical work. So if you don't want to put that in there, you can just replace that main lift, or replace the main lift with something like 5x5, or 6x6, something of that, and just kind of progress up that way for phases and see. I don't know what the purpose of the training is, so all right, we're going to go one more call out, and I'm going to wrap this up. Calling out for, what do they call that, last call, right? Last call for questions. Okay. Nope, I guess that's it. So let's see here. Final words for the day. See if I can leave you some parting advice. All right, I was once told a long time ago, sometimes it's not the people who actually change, it's the fact that you just get to see them without their mask. So take that for what it's worth. We'll see you guys next time. Appreciate the support. I'm out.